continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We have some sad news to report because he was such a friend of the show. He'd appeared on our show many times, and I just did a podcast with him for American Greatness, 4 or 5 weeks ago. Really good. He was a smart guy. Kevin Brock, former assistant director for counterintel for the FBI. You've heard on this show. Maybe you read some of the op-eds he wrote for The Hill and other outlets. He passed away last week, 69 years old, and I was reading. I guess he had been battling cancer for a while, but I had no idea. At legacy.com, there are a lot of great testimonials from obviously former colleagues and people that knew him. I'm going to post one myself after the show. But Kevin Brock, he was great because one of the things that he was able to do is talk substantively about the agency he worked at for almost 3 decades, to talk honestly about it. Like, he loved the agency, he loved the work, he loved a lot of the people that he worked with. He would be very frank about all that, but he also recognized where the agency had lost its way and the individuals who were responsible, and he was willing to name names, and he was willing to talk publicly in a way that a lot of people won't do, because they don't want to. I'm besmirching my agency, and I don't want to cast a negative light on people whose work I do respect there by criticizing the leadership whose work I respect less, and so forth.
He just wanted to hold them accountable.
Well, right. And if you don't have an agency that's accountable to us, to the American people, then, and it has that much power, then you got a real problem. And he recognized that America is more important than the FBI, and the FBI is supposed to understand that rank order of importance. Anyway, very sad news just to hear of Kevin's passing. All right. Bill Barr was on with Neil Cavuto the other day. Of course, Cavuto asking about Trump and who he's going to support.
See if we can. He doesn't want to.
See if we can get a story out of this. Bill Barr is, mum on Trump and so on and so forth. It's sort of idiotic stories the D.C. press corps loves. Anyway, but Barr went through his usual cost benefit on Trump. But the bottom line is that he sussed this out correctly.
At the end of the day, you have to remember, serving in his administration, I was fine with his policies.
Right.
I think his policies were good policies. My problems came with his behavior, which I found very troubling after the election. And I think, I think the idea that he's going to be an autocrat and take over power like some right-wing dictator is not the threat facing our country. The threat facing our country is from the far left and the drift that's been occurring toward really a socialistic system, and one that brooks no opposition, one that cancels people, that has only one viewpoint taught in colleges, that tries to push parents out of the picture when it comes to the education of their children. It's a heavy-handed bunch of thugs, in my opinion, and that's where the threat is.
He's right about that, but some of Bill Barr's behavior, too, in retrospect, was a bit troubling, not in the sense that I don't think there was anything unethical, but I think that upon further reflection with what we know over the last couple of years, he was a little bit slow on the uptake, and maybe that's because he was an institutional man for so long. But he let things go on that shouldn't have gone on, in my view, which is why I'm pleased to have our next guest to talk a little bit more about that. James Burnham, Senior Associate Counsel to the President, Deputy Assistant Attorney General at DOJ, and Counselor to the Attorney General under the aforesaid AG Barr. He's now the principal at King Street Legal, PLLC. James Burnham, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Barr's, since you wrote this piece over at City Journal opposing any future special counsel, so maybe we'll start there and then fold in Barr because, of course, he appointed one. I think my sense of the summation, I guess, of your piece is the special counsel. I mean, the independent special counsel, like a Jack Smith, is indistinguishable from the regular prosecutor, like a Fani Willis or like an Alvin Bragg. And I know that's federal and state, but I mean, the comparison holds up. The point is, there's no such thing as an independent special counsel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be, and I think when you have someone like that, things sort of inevitably get out of control because the attorney general doesn't feel like he has an obligation to supervise the prosecution. It's a quote unquote independent prosecution. And then inevitably, when you have a special counsel where the target is known in advance, as there always is, and as there was with Smith, the people who join the team tend to be people who really want to go after that target. That was certainly the case with the Mueller investigation, which I, played a small part in as a witness. The team was very Democrat based on their past political giving. Logger. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Andrew Weissman. I mean, they're all on MSNBC right now.
Right. Exactly. You got it.
Yeah. And so, right. So, I mean, but so on the special counsel, though, piece too. So he saw the whole thing happen with Mueller, and he's a sophisticated guy. I'm talking about Barr. He's been around D.C. for a long time. He knows how this works or doesn't. And then that Durham investigation just labored on and on and on. And there was no appointment of a special counsel. I know you're arguing against them categorically, but I mean, we're either going to do this one way or we're going to do it another way. When it came to Biden Incorporated, and then now we get, then you get Garland that appoints Weiss, who tries to cut an unholy deal, and Hur, who pulls the punch on Biden because he's congenial and old and forgetful or some such thing. When it comes to classified documents, I mean, it's just a mess. And doesn't Bill Barr? I mean, is it fair to say that Bill Barr had a blind spot there?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, the Durham, I was not involved in the Durham investigation in any meaningful way, but my sense was, and I think the AG Barr said this publicly, part of the problem was COVID really slowed things down. I mean, you couldn't get a grand jury. So in order to file subpoenas and things like that, you need to get the grand jury together in person. And many of the courts shut that down for over a year. And so it was it was unfortunate. I don't know that there was an obvious way around it. In terms of appointing more special counsels, I don't think that would be, would have been a good idea then or was necessary. I think the accountability for the Biden, the things with Biden and David Weiss falls squarely on Merrick Garland's head. And the Senate has an obligation to hold him accountable for that when he comes for hearings, as does the House. It's outrage.
Well, but okay. So then if no special counsel, then how about Barr's Department of Justice? Where were they? The FBI had Hunter's computer, the laptop we know now for a year while Barr was Attorney General. So, I mean, the whole Biden Inc. operation, it seems like Barr completely missed or was uninterested in.
Yeah, I really couldn't say because I left the department in May of 20, and I was not privy to any of the inside knowledge about Hunter and the current president or any of that. So I really just don't know. But I do think that the current Justice Department has an obligation to investigate everything that is happening and can do so without special counsels. I don't think they needed to appoint Robert Hur. I certainly don't think they needed to appoint Jack Smith. And they have an obligation to run this stuff down and prosecute it if it's appropriate. Yeah. And rather than have the two-tiered system we have now, where you've got Jack Smith, the war crime prosecutor, running full speed, and everything that's happening involving the current president going at 1/4 speed.
Do you really see a world where we wouldn't have special counsels anymore? I mean, do you think that is actually feasible?
Absolutely. I think the Justice Department is fully capable of investigating the current president, the former president, as needed. I mean, Mueller is a great example. I mean, the Deputy Attorney General at the time, Rod Rosenstein, could have easily convened some sort of prosecutorial task force to investigate whatever he felt needed to be investigated about Russia collusion. He could have supervised it, and if he had found, as he did find, and as Mueller found, that there was no there, he could shut it down and say, look, there's nothing here. We're moving on. And that would have been much better than letting Mueller spin out of control for 2 years.
Right. Right. And I mean, so just going back, I mean, just in terms of like doing a case study for lessons learned, thinking about how to do this prospectively, was Sessions got a lot of criticism for recusing himself. Was
Right.
he wrong to recuse himself, delegate that to Rosenstein, and watch that play out as it did over the course of the better part of 2 years?
Yeah, so I wasn't, I don't know what advice he got from the career ethics people, but my view is you're the Attorney General of the United States, appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate, and boy, the standard is awfully high for you to recuse, particularly on something that is going to the heart of the new administration like this, where it seems pretty clear in retrospect that a lot of people in the Obama administration had been setting this up for a while as sort of a spring trap to catch us as soon as we came into office. So I don't know if he would call a mulligan now if you ask General Sessions, but I was not a fan of that decision at the time, and I think it looks like it may not have been the right call in retrospect.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the Jack Smith classified documents case and the Her report and the recommendation there, and ultimately how that plays out in court? Because the judge in that case seems to be pretty skeptical of this seemingly different standard of prosecutorial discretion when it comes to classified documents.
Well, look, so I think in some ways this highlights the problem, or one of the problems, of special counsels. It makes no sense to have two different independent decision makers applying different standards on their own when both are nominally part of the Justice Department. And so I do agree that the same standard should obviously be applied to President Trump and President Biden. And when you have two separate independent people, you run the risk of applying different prosecutorial standards, and it just looks ridiculous, like a two-tiered standard of justice. And that's obviously bad. As far as Judge Cannon, the judge who has the classified document case involving President Trump, she's gotten a lot of heat in the press for, I think, being appropriately skeptical about Jack Smith's extraordinarily aggressive attempts to make this case happen and make it happen on a political timetable. To me, I do a lot of defense work, that doesn't involve people like President Trump. And criminal defendants in high-profile cases get railroaded all the time. And I guess I'm kind of glad to see that, at least here it's getting some attention, and that Judge Cannon has the fortitude to stand up to these guys.
Well, yeah, and they also, all of, how incestuous the world in D.C. is, and so sort of these worlds generally speaking when you get to the upper echelons. But we find out like Merchant, the judge in the in the case in Manhattan, his daughter does work for Schiff and all these antagonists with political antagonists to Trump and so on and so forth. But that doesn't even raise the appearance of a conflict of interest. So he says he's the arbiter of what's a conflict of interest, of course, not going to recuse himself. Jack Smith's wife made documentaries for the Obamas, worked with Hillary Clinton. I mean, so, and not to mention what his sort of profile is as well, that's well known. Going back to what we were talking about with Andrew Weissman and FBI, McCabe and Comey, and everybody ends up with this book deal from the same place and sitting on a contributor gig at MSNBC or some other outlet that's antagonist to Trump. I mean, but none of this is a conflict of interest. All of those people are able to separate their political dispositions from their professional responsibilities, we're told. And if mistakes are ever made, they always just seem to be made in the direction of negatively impacting their political opponents. It's very curious how that works. So I just, that the whole thing, it seems to me, just you need Republicans to lead on this, to say there's no such thing as this. This is like unicorn stuff when you're talking about these independent prosecutors who are just there to look at the facts objectively and apply the same standard regardless of the political affiliation of any particular target of an investigation. That's just complete fiction. And now, over the last 8 years, very few people believe it, no matter how many times you say it anyway. So you might as well just acknowledge the truth. At least that would be my advice and counsel to President Trump if you were reelected.
Yeah, I don't think there will be people around. If the president is reelected, or President Trump is reelected, he will have people telling him that he should appoint a bunch of special counsels to investigate Biden and his various antagonists. And I would just say that's a bad idea. It's not going to work. He will get no benefit of the doubt in the way that Jack Smith and these guys get the benefit of the doubt. The courts will not. It'll get portrayed as being a total political witch hunt, led
Right.
by him.
Right.
And it won't work. And so if he wants to investigate things that should be investigated, he should appoint a smart, competent attorney general, and that attorney general should do it inside the Justice Department with, prosecutors. The attorney general can select the prosecutors, but then needs to supervise and be able to defend what the investigations are doing. I think that's the only way it would work.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're going to be Trump's handpicked lawyers one way or the other. So, right. I mean, so you might as well do it in the cleanest way possible. Well, do you have any perspective on the FBI and working with the FBI under Comey or Wray, particularly against the backdrop of FISA being re-upped last week or moving towards re-upping?
I think the FBI is it is a difficult institution to deal with when you're in the government. And I don't think there's much question that the next administration needs to think hard about how to kind of get the FBI more in line with the Justice Department. I mean, one of the things that somebody told me once that I thought was a good point is, so the FBI director is supposed to report to the Deputy Attorney General. I mean, not supposed to, they do. They're below the Deputy Attorney General on the org chart. But the FBI director has an airplane and the Deputy Attorney General has no airplane. So what does that tell you? So Comey is an example. He had been the Deputy AG before he was the FBI director. People shouldn't see it as a promotion to go down the org chart, but you get the plane, you get the building. So I think if President Trump does come back, I don't think there's much question that Chris Wray would probably leave of his own accord. That's what everybody seems to think, and that checks out to me. He should appoint a director who's willing to sort of put the FBI back where it's supposed to be, which is a subordinate sub-agency of the Justice Department, not some Praetorian Guard independent agency that nobody can control.
Anybody you recommend?
That is beyond my competence.
Okay.
I don't know. Not me.
I like that. That's a really good point about who's got the plane, just to give you a sense of the FBI's sort of mission creep, or more than creep, actually. James Burnham, Senior Associate Counsel to the President, Deputy Assistant Attorney General at DOJ, and Counselor to the Attorney General under Trump and Barr. He is now the Principal at King Street Legal, PLLC. James Burnham, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This Mother's Day, treat the mom in your life to a day she'll never forget with brunch at the Trump International Hotel and Tower in beautiful downtown Chicago. Brunch reservations are available now for Sunday, May 12th, with seatings from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Grand Ballroom. Experience an exquisite meal in a buffet style. Feast at the decadent carving, omelet, and dessert stations. Enjoy drink specials, live entertainment, complimentary